Hello again, guys. This is Jake. This is the Commander Casual. I wanted to show you guys one of my kind of homebrewed decks that am admittedly, I think, a little proud of. It's just one of the decks I really like playing, and it's Kynaios, or whatever, and Tiro of Meletis, which came out with, I believe it was the 2016 Commander product. And they very much look like a group hug commander, and I really like that kind of image. This deck probably wouldn't work as well as it does typically in like a regular play group because people would kind of know what you're up to. But one of the things I really love about this deck is that nobody really knows what you're up to unless they start using effects that like look at your hand or look at your deck. Like I played this deck against what is it, Gonti, and he he like had my first top four cards he got to look at or whatever. He found one of my storm cards and immediately outed me to all the guys we were playing against that I was the storm deck. So that was a little unfortunate, but for the most part, people don't really realize what you're doing, as long as you don't kind of show it first. So you can very easily just kind of sit back and bide your time because people don't think you're a threat and that they think you're playing this kind of group huggy style deck. So then they just know you don't have that kind of offensive power out of the gate. So I find that I usually just kind of get left alone until I build up this kind of critical mass, or I start to have to, like, just on how the game's going, have to show kind of some of my cards before I'm ready to really combo off. Anyway, Kynaios and Tiro are actually an awesome general for this deck, and I try and get them out as early and as often as possible, just because they really help you draw cards and ramp, and they seem like like a kind of a group hug commander in that they do give something to everyone, but they help you more in that they let everybody either draw or ramp, and they let you draw and then ramp if you have a land. So they do give you a slight advantage, which is really nice, but nobody seems to notice that. They're also just a 2/8 for 4, and honestly, the 8 toughness helps a lot with just deterring general attacks when opponents feel like they could be doing real damage to someone else, or doing a little bit of damage to someone else earlier on in the game. The point of this deck is less about K and T, as I like to refer to them, and more about this card, Epic Experiment, which is one of my more favorite cards. I have it in paper and just really like playing with it, and it's hard for me not to try and build a deck around it. As soon as I put it in my deck, I find I'm making changes to try and include more instants and sorceries, and that's not always a great idea, but it is in this deck, so it's pretty creature light. Some of the creatures we do have are kind of, they're either win conditions or they just really help the functionality of the deck. So right here, pretty obviously, we have Riku of 2 Reflections, which just gives us some extra copies if we have mana up, which we almost always do, for all of our instants and sorceries, and for some of our creatures, which can actually serve as win conditions. So some of the other creatures, obviously you're not going to be cloning Rashmi, she's just a little extra advantage and maybe a free spell here and there. But cloning a Gutter Snipe when you're storming off is actually massive, and as won me games before. There's slightly smaller but more encompassing Gutter Snipe and Firebrand Archer with Hour of Devastation, so it's non-creature instead of just instant and sorcery, but it's only 1 damage instead of 2. It's also a little cheaper to play. And then, yeah, Talrand, really good with the instant sorceries again. Not a clonable target, but that's fine. It's more just to get some extra value off of some of our other spells while we're ramping up to Epic Experiment. And then, yeah, so there's a lot of things to help you find Epic Experiment. Mystical Tutor, Personal Tutor. There's a Muddle the Mixture, which you can transmute for. Unfortunately, it doesn't have access to black, so you can't use some of the more, I guess, obvious tutors. But because K and T have you drawing extra cards, and there's just some general card draw and filter in this deck, that it's not very hard to find Epic Experiment anyway. And even if you don't, the deck can still easily combo and storm off just with the cards in it, because there's a bunch of other cards that give you value off of casting stuff, like Snoo Ixalan Rare Sunbird's Invocation, which basically lets you, when you cast a spell, you get to look at the top X cards, your library, and then cast a card for X or less, where X is the converted mana cost, so it's kind of like Cascade, but it's okay. And then there's like Bring to Light, which will let you, if you pay enough mana in different colors, will let you search up for different stuff. And we do have a way to actually make it so you can search for 5 CMC. It's just not super common with Chromatic Lantern and Metamorphose. And luckily, a lot of players that play Urborg actually help get us that black mana to make it to fill out the Converge on it too, which is really helpful. And then there's like Increasing Vengeance can be really nice on a finisher sometimes. If you kick a Rite of Replication and then flashback at Increasing Vengeance on it, you can get like, what is it, like a ridiculous amount of copies of certain cards and stuff like that. So those you can combo off in funny ways like that without even using Epic Experiment. But the rest of the deck is just kind of built around building up this massive land or mana base, and then storming off from there. So our notable storm cards are Brain Freeze. So it's just like a mill storm card, can be pretty good against graveyard decks that are already filling up their own graveyards, and you'd be surprised often how actually you can mill people out with this. What else do we have as far as storm goes? I took out I think it's Volcanic Awakening, the land destruction one. I'm not a huge fan of land destruction in Commander. I find it, I mean, Storm isn't the friendliest mechanic either, but I do find land destruction is kind of, it's really not a fun mechanic for anyone, or at least I don't find it fun to destroy my opponent's lands. I do love, however, using Ignite Memories on people, and then just randomly watching them kind of scorch to death depending on what's in their hand. Like if you hit like a Blasphemous Act a couple times, that's like 9 damage or something per tick, and sometimes you're getting up to like 10 Ignite Memories on people. Of course we have Grape Shot because it's hilarious, not because it's good, but because it's hilarious in Commander. Because nobody expects Grape Shot until it happens. Mind's Desire essentially functions like another Epic Experiment in this deck. So you just get to rifle through the top of your library, except that you do actually get to cast just about everything in your deck. Like some of your artifacts, win conditions like Sphinx Bone Wand and Aetherflux Reservoir, and Primal Amulet's not a win condition, but it's just another cool Ixalan rare that I really enjoy that lets you copy stuff. Yeah, as far as general win conditions go, the idea is just kind of like make sure your Epic Experiment X is at least equal to 8, because then you'll hit everything in the deck, including Praetor's Council. And normally what'll happen is you'll Epic Experiment and you'll hit a couple of your rituals that you still haven't pulled yet, or like you'll hit like a Praetor's Council, so you'll get everything you cast back after storming off again, and then you can just storm off some more by recasting those cards, or you'll hit like the Mystic Retrieval, which will get you back something, and then you can storm some more. Or luckily you'll have like a Mizzix Mastery in your hand. Ideally you storm off and then you just overload the Mizzix Mastery, and then you just do it all over again. And another storm card was Hunting Pack that I forgot, which just gives you beast tokens, and smaller Hunting Pack, which is Empty the Warrens, which gives you goblins. But these can be fun to overrun people with, essentially, even though we're not running an overrun in the deck. And then the rest of the deck is kind of just like whatever you want as far as utility. So for me, I've got stuff like Harmonize to draw some cards, Slice and Twain. I know it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other effects of its kind, but I like the cards that draw you an extra card. Chaos Warp for a little bit of removal. Browbeat is a big favorite card of mine. It's really funny seeing how people interact with it, because some people will argue about who should take the 5, and then some people none of them will do it because none of them want to do that, and they assume someone else will, and then you get to draw 3 cards for 3, in red especially. Fabricate to help us find like our artifact win conditions. I have a Beacon of Immortality in here just because I had the card just in my collection, and it's fun because it shuffles back into your library after you use it. So if you kind of keep using Epic Experiments or keep using abilities like Mind's Desire and stuff, you have chances to hit it multiple times, and you can end up with easily over like 100 life just as a convenience. Although if you're casting Beacon of Immortality multiple times, you've probably already won by then. Insult and Injury can be really funny and surprisingly useful. The Insult makes stuff like our Gutter Snipe and our Firebrand Archer and our Grape Shot and our Ignite Memories and any kind of creature tokens we have do double damage, and if you copy Insult with either Primal Wellspring or Riku or Increasing Vengeance, it does that much more damage. I think I flashback and Increasing Vengeance on Insult when I cast it, so I got 3 instances of it, which meant that all my damage was times 8. And then I just had I just used Injury, and even before the injury resolved, it did like 16 to each of my opponents, and I won the game. So I can't express how much I love this deck. It's super fun. One of the kind of a hidden synergy that I didn't notice that's really fun about these kind of tutors, these not card advantage tuners that put it on top of your library, is you can tutor for whatever card you need, and then if you have K and T out, they'll draw it for you by your end step, so you're not leaving it on top of your library, and you don't have to worry about losing that card. Anyway, here's my deck. I put it on tapped out. We really don't have much white in it at all. We've got our... Oh, I forgot to cover our lands. We have like 1 plains in here that we can fetch up with a bunch of our ramp spells, and like Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. But white's not super crucial to the deck. I looked at trying to incorporate cool white storm cards, and I think there's only just 1 plain white one, and it's called Wing Shards, and it has people sacrifice attacking creatures, and it's not super helpful for us because we're hoping to storm off on our turn, as most of the cards that we want to use in those combos are sorceries, especially Epic Experiment. Devil's Play is another kind of like alternate win condition, so you can kind of just cast it for, like, obviously if you hit it with Mind Society or Epic Experiment, the X will just equal 0, so it just gives you another instance of a cast for a storm card at least. But then because it has flashback, it just sits in your graveyard, and as I was saying before, you often hit a bunch of your rituals with Epic Experiment, or you hit a turnabout and you can untap all your lands, or you hit a Frantic Search, you can untap some of your lands. You usually have some spare red mana left over, so you can just flash it back right after that and burn out whoever's left, which is usually like maybe 1 person. I shouldn't say usually. Usually you get, like, as soon as you cast Epic Experiment, at least on MTGO, some guy immediately concedes and just leaves because he doesn't think he'll survive at all, and then usually one guy kind of stays out for half the resolution of it, and then sometimes you'll get good sports that stay out for the whole resolution and compliment you on the neat deck, or actually getting it off, or just being surprised by the fact that it's a storm deck with a kind of a group hug commander. So anyway, I really like this deck. It's a ton of fun. I've just got like these kind of triple lands that are in K&T's colors: Command Tower, Temple of the False God for some extra mana, Reliquary Tower in case we draw too many cards, Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Blighted Woodland in case we're really just dirtling and want to ramp up with the land. All the temples that are in the colors, because I really like the scry effect on them. And then just our basics. So it's a little bit more blue heavy. It's obviously very like Tamir colored heavy compared to the white, because as I said, we have, other than our commander, we have 2 white spells, which is just a Mirari's Wake and a Beacon of Immortality. I don't remember this deck costing me that much to make, but it's definitely not like cheap. There's some cards that go for a little bit more. It's definitely cheaper on MTGO, like way cheaper on MTGO to make compared to paper. But you do see a rise in price on some of these kind of cards that are used a lot in like Modern Storm, like Manamorphose and like Pyretic Ritual, Grape Shot, Desperate Ritual, and stuff like that. An addition you could make to this, just to help like synergies after you cast stuff, would be like a Past in Flames. But I remember at the time I was building this deck, it just seemed a little bit too expensive for me to add. But I do encourage you, if you wanted to build a deck like this, just to look at whatever cards you want and whatever's in your budget and make it your own. You could easily take like all the Storm style cards and a bunch of the rituals out of here, and just keep the ramp in, and then just supplement it with whatever spells you want. It's pretty light on removal, honestly, so you could add some more removal to make it a little bit more functional in general. And then if you just have any other goofy spells, I originally had like a Time Stretch in here and thought about putting like an Expropriate in, but you're already taking like your combo turn already takes such a long time that I didn't like having 1 or 2 extra turns or 3 extra turns after the turn that I already comboed off anyway, because it was basically just like, hey guys, why don't you all just watch me play Magic? And I'm not a huge fan of that. I really like everybody getting a chance to interact, and I know that Storm isn't usually my style, and I understand that a lot of people don't really love Storm, so you can easily cut that kind of stuff out of here and still have a really similar, functional, funny combo deck. But I like the Storm in here. It's very fun, at least for me, and I hope that other people do have fun. I have had other people commend me on the interestingness of this deck, and I hope somebody else finds the fun in it as well. Anyway, this has been the Commander Casual. Peace.